Time, money, effort. These are the three things that I want to save you when it comes to entering the world of sim racing. G'day legends, welcome to Me Some Mods. For those of you who haven't met me yet, my name is Mitch. If you're watching this video, you are looking to enter the world of sim racing, or you've already dipped your toe in that pool and you're trying to find a little bit more information on what to look for and what to look out for in terms of upgrading your gear in the future. In this video, we are going to cover off on three main discussion points. The first one being console versus PC. We'll go into the pros and cons of both of those. The second one being your hardware, so wheel and pedals. And then the third one will be mounting solutions. Now, as we go through each of these, we'll talk about the different price points, pros and cons of each different aspect of it, and if there's anything within those categories that I think you should actively avoid, so you can learn from my mistakes and save yourself some money. All right, first topic of the day. PC versus console, the age-old argument. It has been around for as long as I can remember, and I guarantee you it's not going to go away anytime soon. So, when it comes to sim racing, what are the pros, what are the cons, and which way should you go? In the interest of keeping this video short, I'm not going to go into any great detail on the pros and the cons, but the pros you need to be aware of when it comes to console versus PC gaming. Consoles are cheaper to get into and acquire. There's less equipment needed when compared to a PC. There's a higher chance you may already have the console and some of the games. And overall, it's just a much more simple experience. It's very much a plug and play experience when compared to PC. In saying that, it's not all sunshine and rainbows when it comes to console gaming. There are certain downfalls that are worth mentioning. First off, we have the game library is significantly smaller than what you would have access to on a PC, and generally you don't have the ability or option to modify your games. Second up, we have a limit on display outputs. So console, you are limited to a single screen, or if you've got PS5 and VR2, you can run it in VR, but that is it. Final one I want to raise is that there is also limited hardware compatibility. And when I mean hardware, I mean wheels and pedals. If you're going down the direct drive road, there's only two options for console at this stage, and that is Fanatec or Logitech. So just something to be aware of when you're looking into this. Alright, section 2 of this video, we are talking about the hardware, specifically the racing hardware, wheels and pedals. Now there are 4 types of wheels, different series or styles of wheels out there. You've got your resistance wheels. These things are not worth looking at. They're basically kids' toys. Stay clear of those. They don't have force feedback. It's not what you're looking for. Moving up, you then go into your gear-driven wheels. These range anywhere from $300 plus. That's going to be cover off on like your Logitech G9 series wheels, your entry-level Thrustmaster wheels, all of that sort of stuff. That's probably a good starting point for most people. I myself also started with a Logitech G9 series wheel. And honestly, I ran that thing for a couple of years and it was perfectly fine. For the casual racer that's not wanting to break the bank just to get in and sort of test the waters, it's a good way to start. You get more than enough feeling out of it. You get that experience. You get to start developing your hands and feet racing skills. It doesn't hurt you too much in the hip pocket. The next step up from your gear-driven wheels, you have belt-driven wheels. This will be like your sort of top-tier Thrustmaster. That's like the TGTs and those sorts of wheels. Basically, instead of gears driving gears, there's an electric motor that drives a belt, which is connected to a bigger gear. You just get a bit of a smoother experience with it. They feel a little bit nicer. But again, the price goes up. You're sort of looking around that $800 to $1,000 mark plus for that. The top tier, so the 4th level you're going to be looking at will be direct drive wheels. This will be like your Fanatec stuff, the new Logitech Pro Racing wheel, Moza. There's a whole bucket load of them. A lot of them are generally aimed at PC. If you're looking for consoles, there's only Logitech and Fanatec at this stage that have console support. Direct drive wheels are the top of the food chain, so they are the most expensive. Just one thing to look out for when you are going through the direct drive wheel process, they don't always include pedals. So you need to make sure you're getting a bundle if that's what you're into, or if you're trying to do a full custom build, you'll have to supply your own pedals and peripherals. That basically covers off the 4 types of wheels. Now, as I mentioned, steer clear of the resistance ones, the real cheap kitty looking ones. It's not what you want. You don't want it. It's going to feel terrible. It's going to feel like a kid's toy. They're probably going to break because the quality never looks that good. Minimum, you want to start on your gear drive wheels, and then you can upgrade to a direct drive later. If you got the money there and you just don't really care how much you're spending on it, jump straight to the direct drive end of the spectrum. You won't regret it, like if you know you're going to stick with the sport. But the Logitechs, your baby Thrustmasters, good places to start if you're a little bit financially conscious. Not all pedals are designed equally. It's worth noting that there are a couple of main variances that you should be aware of, down to what the pedals use to actually get the information from your feet to your game computer, i.e. the sensor. Other things such as feeling and pedal travel are probably the two big things you're going to be looking out for when it comes to pedals. Now, in terms of getting the information from your feet to your PC or your game console, there's three main options when it comes to this. The lower end option will be a potentiometer. It's basically like a volume knob on a guitar, but it just picks up however far you push it down. It turns that knob or the dial, and that tells the computer or your console how much you've actually pressed the pedal down. An example of this will be your entry-level type pedals, your Logitechs, your baby Thrustmasters, those sorts of things. The next option you have will be a Hall effect sensor, and it's just done with magnets and a magnetic sensor, and it can determine how far that pedal has been pressed based on the strength of the magnetic field. The final one, which is becoming more popular in the higher end pedals, are load cell pedals. It basically works like your bathroom scale. The more weight that you push into it, it gets a stronger signal and tells the computer or your console that you're pressing the pedal harder. That's the main difference between the sensors, the most common sensors anyway. The only other real difference you'll notice when it comes to pedals will be pedal travel and pedal feel. I guess they kind of fall into the same category. So the cheaper end of the pedals generally don't have a whole lot of movement in them. It might only be an inch or so, where the higher end pedals will give you a greater range of movement, therefore giving you slightly better control and more feeling and ability to control the car a little bit easier with the pedals. That's pretty much the main difference between the pedals. You can get some that mount upside down, you can get some that do all sorts of cool things, but for the most part, the main things you're going to be looking at are what sensor it's running and how much movement they have. It's worth noting on the side of this that not all pedals are cross-compatible with other brands' equipment. So you might not be able to run your Logitech pedals with your Fanatec wheel, that sort of stuff, unless you've got some wizardry going on in your computer and it's all done via USB and you can custom program it. But for consoles, it's a little bit more complicated. Rig versus rig. We are talking mounting solutions for your racing hardware. Now, I've split this down into 5 rough categories for this. First one is going to be the cheapest. It's going to be desk mounting. Then we're going to move up into wheel stands, collapsible rigs, compact style racing rigs, and then into the big aluminium behemoths, the most expensive ones. So we're doing cheapest to most expensive. We're going to talk about the differences between the two. Now, there's no right or wrong answer for what rig you should go for, because it's very, very dependent on your own personal circumstances. If you've got the space and the money, get one of the big ones. If you're space poor and you don't have the cash there to go and throw thousands of dollars at something, get one of the smaller ones. If you've got zero space, go for a desk mount option. It's the cheapest, but there are some drawbacks with that as well. So let's have a chat about it. First cab off the rank, we are talking about the one that will cost you approximately $0, and that is desk mounting. Most wheels these days come with the little bracket that goes onto the bottom that will clamp the wheel to your desk, and you just put the pedals on the ground underneath, and that's it. You are good to go racing. There are downsides to this. Obviously, for the price, you get what you pay for. The downsides are you have no adjustability in this. You can't move the wheel up and down, you can't tilt it, and there's nothing that holds your pedals in place under the table. So if you get a little bit excited on the throttle, or you try to jump on the brakes pretty heavily because you've overcooked a corner, there's a good chance the pedals are just going to slide out from underneath, and then you're going to have a big crash. The other downside of this, which kind of carries over into the next one as well for the wheel stands, is you have to use your own seat. And if you've got an office chair with wheels, like most of them are, you might want to try and find a way of restricting the movement of your chair, because if you have managed to jerry rig something to hold your pedals in place, and you press heavily on the brake, it's going to push your chair backwards. And again, same outcome, you'll end up having a big crash. The second one on our list is a wheel stand. Now, this is the second cheapest option. They're usually anywhere between $100 to $200. It's a very simple contraption. It is a base plate to mount your pedals on. It's got a pole that goes up the center and a platform for you to mount your wheel on. Now, this does give you the benefit of having some adjustability in your setup. You can generally tilt the wheel backwards and forwards, and you have the option to raise it and lower it. The pedal board itself will have a small amount of adjustability, but nothing drastic. And the other thing you need to consider when you are using these is the chair you are using with it. I tried using it on a couch when I had my one. It didn't work so well. I found I had to sit forwards and I wasn't actually sitting in the couch properly. And if you are running an office style chair with wheels on it, you may want to find a way of securing your chair to the base itself. I have seen people run straps around the center pole of the wheel stand and the center pole of their chair just to hold it in place. You got to do what you got to do. If it works, it works. I'm sure you'll come up with a way of doing it. All right, rolling further down the list, we are down to our third cheapest option, and that is going to be the collapsible racing chairs. Now, these are like giant camp chairs designed for sim racing. These things usually sell for anywhere between $300 to $500, depending on what you want to get and where you get it from. It's the next step up from the wheel stand because you're actually on one solid rig that's all attached to itself, so it doesn't matter how hard you want to press the brake or the accelerator or how much things vibrate. It's all one setup and it's not going to go anywhere. The thing I found, so I've actually owned one of these in the past, the thing I found is it's adjustable, but it's not adjustable at the same time. So the wheel deck itself is kind of locked in the one position. The only real control you have over it was if you tilt it up or down. So if you're a little bit taller and a little bit bigger like I am, I actually felt really crowded on this one. So I could race on it, but I couldn't race on it for very long periods of time. The pedal board and stuff was great. You could move that backwards and forwards and set that up to suit how tall you are and how long your legs are. So it was pretty good on that sense. The main benefit of one of these over a wheel stand is the fact that everything is locked together, so you don't have to worry about pedals sliding away from you or pushing yourself away if you've got wheels on your office chair. All right, we are down to our fourth category of racing rig. Now, this is where things start to get a little bit more comfortable. They start to take up a little bit more space. You get a bucket load more adjustability, and they are also quite rigid. We're, of course, talking about the compact style rigs. This is where they start to look like an actual cockpit. For example, the one I am running at the moment is the Next Level Racing GT Extreme. Now, I've had this thing for a couple of years. I've gone and bolted my own Sparco racing seat on it just for some extra comfort. These things, you can slide the seat backwards and forwards. You can lift the wheel up and down. You've got control over the tilt. You've got adjustability in the pedal board. So you're starting to get down to that point now where you've got a lot of adjustability. So you can try and dial this thing in to suit your driving needs and have it to be as comfortable as possible. Now, I can sit in this rig for hours on end and don't have any issue. It's set up for me. It's the way I like it. So this is where we go. The downsides to these, as I've kind of already alluded to, they do start to take up a little bit more space. They're not collapsible very easily. You can dismantle them. For example, my one, you can actually split it in half, but again, you're still stuck with this big thing you need to try and stash somewhere. So if you haven't got a dedicated space where you can leave it set up, they're probably not the right choice for you. These things, as I mentioned, are a lot more solid than all of the previous solutions we have talked about. Now, this is where you'd probably want to be looking if you're wanting to run direct drive wheels and load cell brake pedals. Something where the torque, you can throw your body into it. You're not going to be twisting things. There's not going to be weird flexing and vibrating going on. And you can stand on the brake pedal as hard as you want and nothing's going to move. Alrighty, we are down to our fifth and final style of rig for this one. We are, of course, talking about the big aluminium frame monsters. These things are big, they are heavy, they are expensive, but they are also the most rigid and the most adjustable. It's also worth mentioning that these are probably the most customizable as well. If your intent is to go down the road of motion platforms and those sorts of things, this is probably the style of rig you're going to be looking into. I wouldn't really use this if you're just going to pull it and sit in front of the TV, as a lot of extra bars and stuff are probably going to obstruct your view. So this would be suited for a monitor mount solution or for VR. Other than that, these things are super customizable. You can change every aspect of every part on it to suit your driving style to the T. That's really about it. There's not much more to say about it. You get what you pay for. These are expensive. You get the most features out of it. Now, it's worth mentioning, of all the rigs that we have spoken about tonight, there are a few things you should look out for when you're buying it. Try to stick to reputable brands if you can. I know money is sometimes a problem. It's worth waiting the extra couple of weeks to save up and buy the better one. Trust me, I've had one of those cheap Amazon ones before. My mate bought one. We struggled to put the thing together. None of the bolt holes lined up. Nothing fit how it was supposed to fit. The instructions were terrible. And the end product was actually crap. The thing had that much flex in it, you couldn't turn the wheel without the whole thing moving. If you pressed the brake, the whole thing moved. And this was only running a Logitech G series wheel, so it wasn't even a high-powered wheel. We played on this thing for about half an hour before we pulled it apart, put it back in the box and sent it back to get a refund. And then he bought a proper one a couple of days later. So do yourself a favor, try and avoid those if you can. If you don't have a choice, then so be it. Hopefully you get lucky. You may have to do some custom modifications to make this suit your needs perfectly, but hey, it's just another project to keep you occupied. Other things to avoid are any of the rigs that have a center bar. Now, I know it's not avoidable when it comes to wheel stands. That's just the nature of those beasts. You can get some that have two poles, one on either side. But the real cheap ones have a center bar, you can't get away from that. But the actual sit-in rigs, if it's got a center bar, try and avoid that if possible. It does make it a little bit more complicated when you're trying to use both feet to either brake and accelerate and use the clutch at the same time. You end up smashing your shins into it. That's really the only things I've got to say to look out for when it comes to sim rigs. Up to a certain point, you do get what you pay for. The better the quality rig you get, the less flex it's going to have, the more comfortable it's going to be, and the more adjustable. So from this point, it's up to you to figure out what's going to meet your price point and meet what you actually require in your own personal circumstances. If you've got the space, if you've got the cash, if it meets what you want for the type of wheel that you're trying to drive. Hopefully you guys got something out of this. I apologize, it's a bit of a long video, but there was a fair amount of information to try and touch on. If you guys did find this useful, please consider subscribing to the channel. It really helps me out, and click that like button, just so more people can get all this information as well. If you guys have any questions about the gear that I run, feel free to leave a comment down below. I'll always do my best to answer them or get back to you as best as I can. Failing that, I hope you guys stay safe, have a good day, and I'll catch you on the next one. See ya.